Winter was coming to the island of Sodor. The morning ground was covered in crisp white frost. Thomas and Emily were happily chuffing up and down the line. Thomas was enjoying pulling Annie and Clarabelle. He thought he was doing a grand job. But Emily had other ideas. She thought he could be doing an even grander job. So Emily decided to help Thomas by telling him what he was doing wrong. When she saw him puffing down the branch line, she cried out, "Slow down! You're going too fast and bumping your passengers." Later, Emily saw Thomas by a bridge. He had stopped to take on water and was talking to some children. "Stop talking to the children," said Emily. "You are working and they will make you late." "I'm never late," said Thomas huffily. "There's always a first time," said Emily cheerfully, and she puffed away. Thomas was cross. He loved talking to children and thought Emily was being a big boss in buffers. Annie and Clarabelle agreed at the station. "I am never going to..." Topham Hatt was waiting for him. "Today, Annie and Clarabelle are to go for their refit," he told Thomas. "You must take them to the workshop straight away." "But how will I take the workmen home?" asked Thomas. "You can use ordinary coaches instead," said Sir Topham Hatt. "Yes, sir," said Thomas, and he puffed away to the workshop. Thomas said goodbye to Annie and Clarabelle. He was sad. "I don't know how I'll manage the difficult bend without you," he told his friends. The next day, Thomas puffed to the coach yard. He was still thinking about the difficult bend. Thomas went too fast and gave the coaches a mighty biff. The coaches rolled along the line and bumped into James. "Watch what you're doing!" James snorted. "Sorry," Thomas puffed. Thomas was missing Annie and Clarabelle. He would never have biffed into them. Soon Thomas was on his way to pick up the workers at the new station. Difficult bend," he puffed nervously. The difficult bend came nearer and nearer. Thomas was supposed to slow down, but he wanted to get past the bend quickly. So Thomas went faster and faster. The coaches rattled and shook. Soon be over, Thomas said to himself. And soon it was. "Does this mean Sir Topham Hatt doesn't think I'm special?" he asked. "Looking splendid is not the same..."
"No dilly-dallying," he said.
"Yes, sir," said James, and he set off at once. But James didn't go straight to the coal plant. He decided to go by the canal instead. Then he could see himself in the water for yard after yard after yard. "Magnificent," he puffed. James had forgotten what Sir Topham Hatt had said. At the coal yard, Percy was working as hard as he could, but he was falling behind. The line of coal cars was getting longer and longer, and the yard manager was getting crosser and crosser. Where could James be? James was still enjoying himself, but there was no one around to share his fun. So he headed for Wellsworth Station. But as James pulled into Wellsworth Station, Gordon and the express were pulling out. The passengers had gone. "Bother," said James. He was disappointed, and he left the station. James headed straight for the branch lines. James saw Thomas. "Look at me," he puffed. "Don't I look fine?" "You should be at work," called Thomas. James didn't listen to Thomas. Percy felt better until he noticed the time. "James, I'm going to be late," he cried. Percy wished away. If he was on time, maybe Sir Topham Hatt wouldn't send him to the scrapyards. Percy's first job was collecting pipes from Brendam docks. But when he arrived, Cranky was still unloading. "Hurry up, slow coach," wheezed Percy. "I must be on time." "I'll take as long as I like," said Cranky, and he went slower than ever. The moment Cranky had finished, Percy took off. He hadn't waited for the pipes to be tied down. Percy rounded the bend. The pipe slipped and fell all over the track, but Percy puffed on. But Diesel was soon up to his old tricks. Percy thought he had delivered the pipes, so he chuffed away to his next job. Percy was to take some tar wagons to the workmen mending the roads. Wish I could have fresh fuel. Even Mavis was excited by the new fuel. "Oh my," she said. Thomas was feeling left out. Soon Diesel was showing off. "I'm the fastest engine in the world," he boasted. "Look at me go!" Suddenly, Diesel's engine coughed. Then it started to splutter. Black, smelly smoke billowed from his exhaust. "I feel sick," wailed Diesel. Mavis started billowing smoke too. "So do I," she groaned. The quarry manager was upset. "It's the new fuel," he cried. "Water must have leaked into the tanks." Soon all the other diesels had broken down. Harry, Bert, and even Salty had ground to a halt.
Soon he arrived at Wellsworth Station.
So Sir Topham Hatt telephoned the quarry manager.
Thomas collected
And the quarry manager came to see Thomas.
So he raced away.
"You are to collect fresh
Soon he
diesel from the
arrived at
fuel
Wellsworth
depot."
Station.
"Right away, sir," whistled Thomas. Emily arrived. And he steamed out of the quarry as fast as... Thomas noticed something strange on Emily's freight car. It was long and pointy, but it was covered up. "Is that part of the surprise?" he asked. "That," said Emily, "is for me to know and you to find out." And she puffed away. "Bother," wheezed Thomas. "If they won't tell me," Thomas huffed, "I'll find out myself." Thomas secretly followed Emily. He puffed as quietly as he could. And he didn't follow too closely. Suddenly, Emily turned down one of the branch lines. Thomas raced after her, but just as he got to the branch line, the signalman changed the points. Thomas had to go straight ahead. "Cinders and ashes!" cried Thomas. "How will I ever find out what the surprise is?" into place. The troublesome trucks were glad that job was finished. Oh. James happily steamed along. He was thinking about the fireworks. He was imagining all the sparkles, flashes, and shooting stars when suddenly there was a loud noise. And James ground to a halt. "I will have to go and call for help," said his driver. Thomas puffed back into Knapford Station as Gordon was letting off his passengers. Children and grown-ups from all over the island had come to see the fireworks. Seeing the children cheered Thomas up, but Sir Topham Hatt looked concerned. "James has broken down," he said. "You must collect him, Thomas, and bring him back, or the fireworks display will be cancelled." "Oh no," cried Thomas. "Then all the children will be sad." And he set off to collect James. Thomas puffed across the countryside. Even with his light on, Thomas knew he had to be very careful.
was steamed over to Marin Station.
Thomas found James broken down on the track. Hello, busted boiler, teased Thomas. You don't look How many journeys have you done? Asked James brightly. This is my first, said Thomas. Ha! Huffed James. I'm on my third. I'm as red as a rocket and twice as fast. And he steamed quickly out of the station. Thomas was upset. He wanted to go fast more than ever. Now the eggs were unloaded and Thomas chuffed slowly out of the station. Thomas puffed across the countryside, very, very slowly. Then Thomas saw Toby taking on coal in a siding. His freight cars were full of roof tiles. Toby was having a wonderful day. I'm on my second journey, he whistled proudly. Thomas was very sad.
Sniffed Elizabeth crossly.
Toby rushed
I've got
past
urgent
him.
delivery, said
It made Thomas want to go faster than ever.
Elizabeth didn't listen.
Even Toby has made more journeys than me, he moaned. Trevor was working as hard as he could. At last, he pulled the tree off the track. But Emily didn't say thank you to Trevor. All she said was, "About time." Every time she came across workmen clearing the track, she blew her whistle and wheezed her steam. This made the workmen cross, but Emily thought it made them work harder. Then Emily came across a fallen water tower. It had crashed onto her line. "Oh no!" she cried. Elizabeth was helping the workmen push the tower off the track. The tower was very heavy. Emily decided to boss Elizabeth too. "Hurry up!" Thomas went faster and faster. She blew her whistle as loud as she could. "Cinders and ashes!" Thomas cried. Salty was at the bottom of the hill. He was waiting for a signal. He didn't know Thomas was coming down the hill. Thomas was out of control. Thomas braked as hard as he could. But the freight cars of fish were too heavy. "Oops," said Thomas. "Sorry." Thomas reversed back onto the track. Salty was covered in fish. Changed the points. "Never mind me, Artie," said Salty. Thomas reversed "The smell reminds me of the sea." And changed the points. Thomas's driver telephoned for help. Thomas reversed back and soon Harvey was clearing the tracks and changed the points. Thomas wondered what Sir Topham Hatt would say. Next, he had to go to the chocolate factory. Thomas hurried through the baking sun. "I've still got time to take some children to the seaside," he panted. Thomas puffed faster and faster. His wheels clattered and his pistons pumped. But he puffed so fast, the signalman didn't change the points in time. Thomas raced down the wrong track. "Bother," cried Thomas. Thomas had to reverse slowly and carefully back to the points. Then he had to wait while Toby went past. Toby was taking more children to the seaside. They were having a wonderful time. "Everyone gets to take their children except me," moaned Thomas. At last, the signalman changed the points. Thomas reversed back onto the track. And soon Emily could see Brendam Docks up ahead. "Twice before tea time," she puffed happily. "I am as good as Gordon." Then there was trouble. Emily slowed down. "What's happening to me?" she cried. She went slower and slower. Emily had run out of water. She huffed and puffed But she had no steam left. Finally, Emily came to a complete stop. Sir Topham Hatt arrived on board James. He was very cross. "You should have waited," said Sir Topham Hatt sternly. "And now you have caused confusion and delay. You left the brake coach, stranded Bertie's passengers, and bumped your coaches. You must learn to be more patient." Emily knew Sir Topham Hatt was right. She felt very bad. She was only trying to be as good as Gordon. "I'm sorry, sir," she said sadly. James pulled Emily into the docks. Then he went back to collect the express. At the flour mill, the flour had been loaded. "Now I need an engine to take the slow goods train," said Sir Topham Hatt. Emily had an idea. "May I take it, sir?" she said. "If I promise to go slowly?" Sir Topham Hatt thought it was a grand idea. "The slow goods train needs lots of patience," he said.
You're lucky, James.
Emily was pleased.
I have to do the Black
She was
Lock run.
"Why don't you like going to Blacklock?" asked Emily.
There are boulders all over the tracks, he moaned. They bash your buffers and scratch your paint. And there's the Black Lock Monster.
"What's the Blacklock Monster?"
Nobody knows, said James. Black figures move in the water and then they disappear.
"Oh." And James puffed away. Emily was pleased she didn't have to go to Blacklock. At the flour mill, the flour had been loaded onto trucks. Emily was coupled up. Then she puffed across the countryside to Knapford Station. But the troublesome trucks saw a chance for mischief.
Hold back, they screeched.
Emily pulled as hard as she could. But the troublesome trucks made her go very slowly.
The express train started to move.
Emily was late delivering the
The
flour,
express train started to move.
so there would be no fresh bread that day. Sir Topham Hatt was cross. "This
Then
means
he
I won't
started
have any
to
shunt the freight cars." He shunted coal cars for Henry and slate cars for Donald. He even shunted fruit and vegetable cars for Douglas. "Maybe I can do it," Toby chuffed. But then Gordon puffed past. He was pulling the express with lots of coaches. Toby watched as Gordon puffed toward the hill. Gordon puffed with all his might, but once again the express was too heavy. Gordon was stuck. "Bother!" he huffed. Gordon's driver called the yard manager, and the yard manager came to see Toby.
You need to push Gordon to the top of the hill,
The yard manager said. "Yes, sir," groaned Toby. "But Gordon looks much too heavy for me to push." Toby puffed nervously. "Don't worry," Thomas called. "You can do it, Toby." "I'll do my best," he puffed, and he chuffed off to Gordon's hill. When Gordon heard that Toby was coming, he was very cross. "You're learning a little bit," groaned Gordon, "but you're still not doing it right. Watch me." Gordon wheezed some steam and pulled out of the station. "Big blue show-off," puffed Percy. But Gordon wasn't listening. He was already puffing through the countryside. "I'm so clever," Gordon chuffed. "There must be someone else I can show." And there was. "Watch me," Gordon chuffed as he raced past James. "I puff nice and smoothly." Then he raced past Toby. Watch me! I'm the fastest and the best! Gordon puffed into the station. He was very excited. There were lots of people he could show off to. Watch how smoothly I can go! Gordon was so busy showing off, he didn't see how icy the track was. Gordon slid right through the station and into a side slip. Everyone watched as he puffed into a big pile of snow. Asked Percy hopefully.
No, Percy, said Salty. Other magic words like hey presto, hocus pocus, and abracadabra.
Frankie had lowered the carpet onto Percy's flatbed. It doesn't look very magic, said Percy sadly. But as Percy puffed away, the carpet unrolled, as if by magic. Percy puffed as quickly as he could. He had to stop at a junction. Gordon was waiting there. When Gordon saw what Percy's special delivery was, he sniffed louder than ever. A carpet? No wonder Sir Topham Hatt gave the job to a small engine. Just then, the wind whistled and whirled and the carpet flew into the air. Look, Percy cried. It is a magic carpet, and it can fly. That's not... Your water tanks have run dry, his driver told him. We'll have to wait for help. Just then, Edward pulled up beside James. Please push me to the water tank, pleaded James. I'm sorry, Edward puffed sadly. You wouldn't take my freight cars to the quarry, and now I'm running late with my passenger train. And Edward steamed away. Edward stopped and told the signalman all about James. The signalman telephoned for help, and soon Salty was on his way. He pulled up alongside James. Why didn't you fill up with water this morning, matey? James told him about the line at the water tank. I've heard you were too busy to help Edward too, said Salty. I was in a hurry, protested James. Mine is the most important job on the island. No job is more important than helping another engine, said Salty firmly. And deep down in his boiler, James knew Salty was right. Thanks to Salty, James's water tank was soon filled and he was well on his way. Thomas had delivered all the... He knew he had to make up for lost time. He was very tired. Then James saw Diesel up ahead. He had broken down and looked unhappy. James wanted to tease him, but then he remembered what Salty had said. No job is more important than helping another engine, he said to himself. And even Diesel is an engine. He was tired, but he
Come on,
wanted to prove he was a
Diesel. I'll
really
push you
useful
back.
engine. Very well, Thomas. You must take some chickens to the market, sheep to the farm, and the children to school. That's a very big job for a small engine, chuffed Gordon. You're bound to need some help. This made Thomas cross. Tank engines don't need help, snapped Thomas. We're really useful. And he puffed away. Chickens to market, sheep to the farm, and children to school, Thomas puffed. First, Thomas collected the chickens. Next, Thomas puffed into the valley. All the sheep were waiting for him. Come on, Thomas panted to the sheep. I'll take you to the farm. Finally, Thomas trundled into the station. He was very tired. The children's smiling faces made him feel happy. But his axles were aching. The children were all on board, and Thomas puffed away.
Every chuff got harder and harder.
Thomas puffed up Gordon's
Thomas
hill
steamed up, but every puff and every chuff
got
got
harder
and through
and
Henry's
harder.
tunnel. Thomas was so
It
excited
was a
his
very
axles
long
tingled.
The acrobats and clowns climbed aboard Annie and Clarabelle. Thomas buffered up to collect the coaches.
Do you want a wheel there, matey?
Asked Salty cheerfully. Thomas remembered what Sir Topham Hatt had said about sharing the work. But the band started playing, and everybody was cheering. Thomas thought this was the most wonderful special delivery ever. Even though the train was very heavy, he didn't want to share it. "No, thank you, Salty," he gasped. "I can do it on my own." And Thomas took the biggest puff he could and slowly pulled away. Thomas trundled through the countryside. His pistons pumped and his traction rods rattled. But Thomas didn't notice. He was having far too much fun. Thomas puffed toward Marin Station. He had a wonderful surprise. Passengers and staff waved and cheered as he passed by. The band played on, and Thomas blew his whistle in time with the trumpet. Thomas felt very special. Pulling the circus was lots of fun. The steep hill. The freight was heavy. Thomas stopped by a bridge. Percy was waiting there. Race. "Please, sir," said Thomas, Percy, Gordon, and James all together. "May I go?" "You all have other work to do," boomed Sir Topham Hatt. "Edward will take the furniture." James and Gordon groaned. "Fancy sending a back engine to do an express engine's job," sniffed Gordon. "He'll lose the race and let the whole railway down," said James. Thomas and Percy were cross. Edward was their friend. "Spencer has a bigger boiler," said Thomas, "but that just means more hot air." "An honest steamy can beat a pouty puffer any day," added Percy. Edward set off, slow and steady. "We'll do my best, we'll do my best," he puffed. Spencer set off and quickly passed Edward. "I've won already," he boasted.
My job. Wishing trees don't run
And with a
railways.
whoosh, he was gone.
That's my job. Wishing trees don't run railways, said Sir.
Edward and his passengers were on board. Henry blew his whistle and pulled out of the station. But Henry puffed too quickly. "Go gently," called his driver. "You can bump freight, but you can't bump passengers." "Sorry," puffed Henry. Henry puffed proudly through the countryside. "Pulling passengers is a grand job," he said. Gordon was in the repair yard. He was being fitted with a new boiler. But Gordon felt lonely. He was missing his passengers. The passengers were missing Gordon, too. They were having the bounciest, bumpiest ride they had ever had. When Henry got back to the sheds, Sir Topham Hatt was waiting for him. "There have been complaints," he said sternly. "Passengers are not like logs. You must be gentle." "Yes, sir," said Henry sadly. Being gentle was very difficult. Then Henry saw Gordon. He was looking miserable. "My wish has made Gordon go to the repair yard," gasped Henry. This made Henry feel very bad. The next day, Henry had to collect the dining car. He tried his best to be gentle. 9 o'clock, so you must not be late. But he shunted. The next morning, Gordon waited for everyone to go. Then he puffed slowly away so no one would hear his squeak. Once out of the sheds, he started to pick up speed. His pistons pumped, and his wheels spun, and he began to squeak again. "Oh my," said Gordon. Then he heard something even worse. It was a rattle. "Oh dear, he cried. Diesel was right. I'm falling apart. What will Sir Topham Hatt say?" So Gordon slowed down.
A thick blanket of snow lay over the island.
Gordon crawled slowly into the station to collect the
All
children.
the engines were busy carrying passengers and goods from station to station.
Onto the tracks. Gordon's boiler sank. Percy heard Thomas. He was heading straight for the snowdrift. If he did not stop in time, he would have an accident. "I must warn him," cried Percy. Percy took the biggest puff he had ever taken, and he blew the loudest whistle he had ever blown. "Something must be wrong," cried Thomas. And he applied his brakes just in time. "Cinders and ashes," he gasped. "Thank you, Percy." That evening, Sir Topham Hatt came to the sheds. "Well done, Percy," he boomed. "You blew your whistle at the right time and saved Thomas from an accident. You are a really useful engine, and a safe one." Percy was so proud his firebox tingled. Percy uses his whistle safely now, and all his friends are glad to see him.